Like many of you, I'm still processing what happened yesterday. And it's definitely a sad day for our country, not just because a bunch of armed vigilantes, insurrectionists stormed one of the most important landmarks of our nation, but because it's so drastically different than what happened over the summer when peaceful protests were attacked by police and protesters were treated so harshly, as opposed to how they were treated yesterday. So when I'm having a hard time processing things, sometimes I turn to art, which for me sometimes means graphic design. And I was really struck by several images that were sort of being splashed across my social media yesterday. This one really got to me, though. This is one of those how it started and how it's going meme images. And at the top, we have the U.S. Capitol on the day of Trump's inauguration, and we have it yesterday. And just it's almost the exact same perspective, and you see just how different the two are, and it really strikes home all the things that have happened in the way that our country's changed in the past 4 years. And it's hard not to get a little choked up to see the difference. So we're going to do something a little similar like this to hopefully help you process what's going on in your head. So basically, we're going to look for two different images that are sort of going to be contrasting images. And we're going to use our familiar text cutout procedure to sort of drive it home even further. So here's the example that I came up with. The image on the left is one that I also saw a lot today. This is an image taken a few weeks ago when there was a Black Lives Matter protest planned for the nation's capital. And on the right, we see how things went yesterday. And so for me, what was very striking was that they were extremely well prepared, or at least how they felt they should be prepared for the Black Lives Matter protest, with a bunch of soldiers and police officers who were really looked like they were ready for anything. And then on the right-hand side, we saw that there were just sort of a handful of police officers unequipped for what was coming, even though they knew it was coming. And we've seen video that what happened after this was basically the police officers just let them through so they could sort of trash the Capitol. So the first step of the project is to go ahead and find two images that sort of compare and contrast two different aspects of what happened yesterday. And then obviously I put the word privilege in the text cutout because it just sort of shows you the kind of white privilege that exists where you could literally storm the nation's capital armed, inciting violence, destroying property if you're white. But if you're not, then the same sort of actions would probably end up getting you shot or worse. And so we'll go ahead and start looking for images that will work for your particular picture essay. So when you get to Google Images or wherever you want to search for your images, I think I basically just started off with the word Capitol Riot. Now, some of these images won't be from yesterday, so you got to sort of make sure that you're finding the things that you want to find. Some of them are very obvious. You'll see the one I actually chose is right here. But there are a lot of images to choose from, a lot of ridiculous images. I didn't even see this one. Typically, I would tell you that you should change so you're only looking for large images. But since this is brand new and we might not have as many images to choose from as we would normally have, I'm not going to worry about that. So there are a lot of disturbing images on the screen right now. You can find one that really speaks to you about sort of the absurdity of what happened. But then we have to go and look for another image. We have to go and find something around, basically, I think the easiest might be like a Black Lives Matter protest. And there's obviously the one that I used, but there are so many good ones here, right? So what might be a really easy way to go about it is we can see what a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest looks like, as opposed to the absolute destruction that we saw yesterday. But basically, you want to find images. One thing you might want to keep in mind is, like, for example, this image is in landscape view, so it's longer than it is wide. Whatever you do choose, you probably want them both to be that way. So if they're, you want to choose two images that are in landscape view. You don't want to have one that's in landscape view and one that's in sort of more a portrait view, like this one, which is maybe longer than it is or taller than it is wide, because that's going to make putting them next to each other a little bit harder. So keep that in mind, and when you find images that work for you, go ahead and download them, and we'll hop into Pixlr. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and grab this image, so I'm going to save that image, and I'll say BLM, and I'll call this peaceful. And then I'll hop back over to my last search, and I'll go find an image that's also landscape view, and maybe something like this. Or I'll go ahead and pause, and I'll find something, and I'll come back, and I'll meet you in Pixlr.com. Okay, so I went ahead and downloaded another image, and I hopped over to Pixlr.com. It's been a little while since we've used this program, so don't forget that we're using Pixlr E. And we're going to go ahead and open up an image, and it doesn't really matter which one you choose. You need to choose one of the images that you downloaded. Probably the one that you want to have on the left-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my Black Lives Matter picture. It's going to open up inside Pixlr. And basically, we need to make some room on the other side here for the other image. Actually, if your image is in landscape like mine is, we're probably going to go vertical, right? So I'll put one on top, one on the bottom. If your image is more of a portrait view where it's taller than it is long, you'd probably put them side to side, like my earlier example. So you see these images are taller than they are wide, so I put them side by side. In this next image that we're doing right now, I'm going to go ahead and flip that so that they're going to be above and below. So what that means is we're going to go into image. Actually, before we do that, we are going to add a new layer, and we're going to add an image here, and we're going to go ahead and just bring in the other picture. You're going to see they're going to be on top of each other, and that's fine. They're going to be different sizes. That's also fine. We're going to figure that out in a second here. But once I have both images on the screen, I can go up to the image button, and I'm going to do canvas size. And since I'm going vertical up and down, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the height. Now, if I was going side by side, I would change the width. That should probably make sense. So if I'm going up and down, I'm going to change the height. So right now the height is 628. So let's say that's going to be, if we double that, that's going to be 1256, I believe. Doesn't have to be exact, but something along those lines. And that's going to give me room on the top and the bottom here. So I'm going to go ahead, and my background image starts off locked, so I can't move it. So we'll click the three dots here, and we're going to unlock that, and we're just going to move that to the top. This image is much larger, so we're going to go ahead first off and shrink it down, and we're going to bring it here underneath, and we're going to size it the best we can. They're not going to have the same dimensions as each other, so chances are that some of one of the images is going to get cut off, and that's fine. I'm going to get as much of the image as I can on here. I don't want any empty space. So I'm going to make it as close as I can. If it turns out your pictures are just really, really different, you might want to go back and find two that are a little bit more similar. But this will work for what I want. So now I basically have my two images above and below, and now all I have to do is the text cutout portion. At this point, just to make things simple, I might go ahead and lock these layers because I'm not going to be changing them, and I don't want to accidentally move them around. I can always unlock them if I need to. Then I'm going to add a new layer that's going to be blank, because I need a blank layer in order to make a rectangle. I'm going to get my shape tool here and make sure that rectangle is the one that's actually selected. And I'm going to take the stroke all the way down to 0. The stroke would be the outline of the shape, and we don't want to have one on this, I don't think. The two colors over here, the background color or the one on the bottom, is going to be the color of the rectangle. I think typically black or white looks the best. You can always flip them back and forth. You can always click on one and change it to the other if you need to. I'm going to make mine black. You do what feels best for you. But I'm going to go ahead and do my best to eyeball this so that it's sort of halfway in between the two images. And then I'll grab my arrange tool, and I'm going to do actually it makes it really easy. The guides here will make sure that it is lined up in the center. When I see that, I know that it's lined up in the center on the vertical and the horizontal axis. So that's great. And now I'm going to add one more layer. It's going to be a text layer. Now the important thing here is that you choose a word that sort of really encompasses sort of the dichotomy of these two images and sort of how it makes you feel. So I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use the word protest, although I don't consider what I see in the bottom picture necessarily to be a protest. I consider that to be a riot. But I think that it just sort of goes to show you sort of the different ways that these two groups have gone about the idea of protest, because they both feel as though they're protesting. I'm going to make sure that I have the word selected, and when it's selected and highlighted like this, then I can go ahead and change the font. And remember, for these kinds of text cutouts, we want nice thick font, and I hate the name of it, but this Daddy Day one works really well. And then I can go ahead and make it so it fills in the space of the rectangle, and I can grab it, and once again I can use my purple guides here to make sure that it's centered vertically and horizontally. And now, at this point, we need to make sure that your word is spelled the way you want it, it's the size you want it, it's the font you want, because after this next step, you won't be able to change the actual letters, because we need to go up to here and we need to rasterize it. It's going to stop being a text element, it's just going to start being a shape. That's what we need. So we're going to rasterize it, and now I can't go back and change the actual letters in the word. Once I've done that, I can add a glow. Now, the important thing with the glow is that it's a different color than the actual letters. So if you made the letters white, the glow has to be something else. I'm going to make sure that I have the text layer selected over here in the Layers panel. I'm going to go over to Filter, Outer Glow, and I'm going to go ahead and choose red. And we'll get a little preview here. You can change the size. I think it's best not to go nuts. We just want the letters to stand out. You can change the feather. Makes it a little softer around the edges. And opacity, although there's not really a whole lot of point in bringing the opacity down. Once you like what you have, you can press apply. This next step is important. It's the step that I usually forget. So we need to take this top layer, protest, click the three dots, and we need to merge it down into the rectangle layer. So now they're one layer. And the last step is to take the cutout tool, looks like the scissors, choose the magic mask tool, and now we can simply click inside the white portion of each letter, and that will remove the white so that we can see what's underneath, and we've cut out the text so that we can see the images that are underneath. So this is the final image. When you're done, you can go to File and you can go to Save. You can do JPEG or PNG as long as this right here is under 10 megabytes. If it says KB for kilobytes, then you're fine. You don't have to worry about it because kilobytes are smaller than megabytes. But as long as it is under 10, then Jupyter will have no problem turning it in. So I would actually choose PNG if you can, if it's less than 10. The JPEG you'll see is much smaller. It's 460 kilobytes. So I'm going to choose PNG, give it a name, put your name on it, and go ahead and download it, and that's what you'll turn into Jupyter. I hope this project in some way helps you to process sort of things that are going on right now, and hopes maybe to provide a little bit of anxiety reduction. So take a few minutes, think about it, and good luck.